folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have our last of the 2024 films, folks. So we have The Order, directed by Justin Kurzel, A Different Man by Aaron Schimberg, A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg, and then finally, newly released, now in theaters, The Brutalist, directed by Brady Corbett. So this is our wrap-up episode of the year, folks, trying to get all those last remaining films of 2024. Let's hear what Vincent Daly has to say about it. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing over there, buddy?
How's it going, Tommy?
It's going okay for me. How was your week of movies, man?
Week was good. Another 4 spot. Excited to get to all these, honestly. I initially was looking at the list. I was just like, is this boys versus girls? Was last week all girl films and this is all boy films? But no, it's Juror number 2 was definitely not a chick flick. So
no, I don't even know what Juror number 2 was.
Yeah.
I don't know who
educational.
It is educational.
But this week, I was excited obviously for The Brutalist, just being the most hyped and also hardest to see as well.
Yes,
which kind
definitely.
of creates almost a frustrating relationship with it. But all movies that I really wanted to check out in some capacity, and one very big surprise. I was really, really happy with one film this week.
Well, we did see The Brutalist together, so I know that you know that I watched that one. I didn't get a chance to anything else. And this week, I liked that. Well, one, we're kind of just cleaning everything up. So The Order, A Different Man is getting buzzed because Sebastian Stan won
Golden Globes.
Yeah, won a Golden Globe for it. A Real Pain. We had What's-His-Face also win a Golden Globe for it.
Yep, Kieran
So
Culkin.
these are definitely all have buzz around them.
Absolutely.
And The Order,
and Adrian Brody won.
well, for The Brutalist, yeah. And that's getting real buzz. And then as far as The Order, I think we both were just interested in it, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is really the only outlier here. So, I mean, we can get started with that if you want.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so let's jump to The Order. Rated R, hour and 56 minutes. What? I don't even know when this came out in the year. I want to say this was
November?
like November-ish. Okay,
yeah.
But very limited release, right?
Absolutely.
And then it's now on, how did you view it?
I think this one... No, this one I had to buy. I had to buy Real Pain and this one. I was able to rent Different Man, and then, I mean, God knows the expenses to get down to an IMAX theater to see The Brutalist. I mean, we got gas miles, we got everything.
We had fun. We had a good time. Okay, so this is starring Nicholas Hoult and Jude Law.
Yeah.
And get into the film, what it is about, and then overall, how'd you like it?
Well, wouldn't you know it, third time around the bend with Nicky Hoult. We got Nosferatu.
3 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
3
really
weeks
crazy.
in a row with Nicky.
Yeah, Nosferatu, Juror number 2, and now his worst haircut to date. I mean, really, this is the most homegrown haircut you could ever pluck out of the 70s and put into this movie. It's something else. This one was definitely the outlier this week, though, like I said, as it's not getting much award buzz anywhere.
Yeah.
That kind of shocked me and was kind of an auto-clued in my catch-up because I had sights on it, thinking not too long ago a big crime takedown film like this would just easily get called Oscar bait and be picked for a few nominations. I have no experience with our Australian director, Justin Kurzel, and maybe his career is a small indicator of that. In this year alone, he also released a documentary called Ellis Park in addition to this film.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was looking at that and I was like, it's one of those things, documentaries. If we're complaining about hard to see films like as they come out. Documentaries, it's like, what is the release schedule on these? It's ridiculous. But beyond that, on the negative side, the only film I really recognize from his catalog is 2016's awful take on the Assassin's Creed games with Michael Fassbender.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's this guy.
Yeah, odd little studio, I don't know. The rest of his movies are nothing like that either.
Right.
He has a small collaboration with Fassbender with Macbeth in, I want to say, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, kind of heads or tails. Couldn't really tell you what I was walking into here. The Order is an FBI crime true story based off of the 1989 book, The Silent Generation, detailing the rise and fall of a white supremacist cult. We're set in good old Spokane, Washington, where despite it being 1983, the rural atmosphere is both majestic and a little spooky. It's a little dangerous for how isolated the land feels. Jude Law plays Terry Husk, the real-life FBI hotshot from New York that inherits this backwards boredom of his new local office, trying to run away from the stress that was just going to find him here anyway. There is a rising tension in the mountains. The Aryan Nation and its increasingly violent splinter groups are springing up without anyone to keep them in check. Nicholas Holt's Order is looking to escalate their radical teachings into action, and when a spree of bank robberies starts to point back at him, that plan only speeds up faster as the police continue to underestimate what they are dealing with. Let's start with some good first.
Mm-hmm.
It might sound like a little bit of a backhanded compliment, but this movie is beautiful. Really, really gorgeous.
This is why I was most interested.
Sure, right.
So when the trailers were hitting and I was checking those out, it just looked beautiful, and I liked because it seemed like they were on location. So the fact that we're in Spokane, Washington.
Yeah.
I was digging the vibe of the film.
Yep.
And I mean, the cinematographer is nothing special. I mean, he did a lot of True Detective, The Master of the Air show, The Apple show, and then he also did this Assassin's Creed and Macbeth.
Yep.
But it just seemed like a good-looking thing, and Jude Law looked good.
Right. He looks cool. Absolutely. The reason why I say call it kind of a backhanded compliment is that, it is undeniably gorgeous, but in ways, it kind of betrays the gritty crime element here that is the driving force of the movie. It just any moment that we're in, like, the driveway of some trailer park or this, like, Aryan Nation compound, you have just, like, the most gorgeous mountains in the background and pine forests. And it's just, like, there is something kind of viscerally that took away from, like, oh, I need to feel, like, a little yucky here. It was a little bit too majestic.
So it didn't feel like reclusive, like small town.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think that's where it steps up a little bit.
Okay.
This beautiful scenery, absolutely gorgeous. Even the most mundane shots are gorgeous. But I think that's where it's a payoff with the film, that there's a theme that definitely surrounds this of kind of downplaying these radical groups as like kind of a good old boy mentality, and having this feel so authentically in the middle of nowhere is also scary in a way of just like, oh man, if you're getting away with it, you're getting away with it here. It's like, I mean, how do the cops even find you? Or that much in the woods type of stuff.
Can I say this? There's something about this kind of location that I feel like it works for me. And that's why all I had to do was see the trailer and I got excited for this. Okay, so 2 Nicolas Cage films come to mind.
Okay.
Pig and Mandy.
Yeah, true.
Okay,
true.
same Pacific Northwest. Place Beyond the Pines.
Oh, so true.
Just like the vibe of it kind of works.
It's just pine trees.
It's something that's all I need.
But you get what I'm kind of saying there. Like, it is a great looking film, but at the same time, it kind of creates some weird conflict of just like, I don't know. I'm almost paying attention to the backgrounds that I am more than the crime.
And it's too beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was
because Mandy has that, but Mandy, I don't know if Mandy
true.
actually utilizes mountains.
True.
But it has that.
It utilizes bathrooms and Nick Cage and his tiny whities. But again, mostly a very positive thing, and I think the looks of this film are where that hits it home. Everything else, though, I was kind of meh on. Performances across the board just felt very cliche. Most of all, Jude Law. who just gives his best kind of hard-boiled cop routine that just largely goes nowhere. Believe it or not, I think the show stealer is Ty Sheridan, from the kid from Ready Player One. Believe it or not, he steals a lot of scenes that he's in, which was just totally unexpected.
That does surprise me.
Yeah, because I was expecting like the real standouts being Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult. Yeah,
is Ty Sheridan also the blind kid in Dunkirk?
No, you're thinking of why can't I forget his name?
Whoever that other kid is,
yeah,
and that's the one in Saltburn, correct?
Bingo.
Okay,
bingo.
so Ty Sheridan maybe isn't. I'm getting him confused.
The only one I know him from, well, actually not true. It's Ready Player One. He also was Cyclops in the reboot X-Men films. So a lot of like popular stuff. But he really, I don't know. There's something to it that he was. You could feel that where a lot of these actors felt like they were just kind of giving not a bad performance, but just a middle of the road performance.
Yeah.
It felt like he was really trying in every scene.
Interesting.
Really
Okay. I really had my chips down on Jude Law for this one.
Yeah, I did too. You put a mustache, and same with Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. You throw a mustache on him, it's just like, all right, let's see where this goes. But I feel like it was just such a cliche character, and obviously this being a true story, it can't vary too much from how things play out or how who he's depicting plays out. But there was just something there that it was just kind of felt like plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the camera work also doesn't help character moments and how they feel in this. Unfortunately, next to the great shots of the scenery, this movie does sport that hyper blur that I hated so much from recent Zack Snyder films. And I just sincerely hope that this trend gets dropped soon.
Yeah, describe that again. Like, what is it you're seeing?
So basically, any kind of up-close scene, and I'll say it's used kind of interesting in, like, detective looking at evidence moments in this, but the focus of the camera you'll perfectly see the main subject, whatever character's on screen in perfect detail, but I mean, I'm talking less than a couple inches behind them. The entire rest of the screen is blurred out of focus. I've been calling it kind of a hyper blur. I honestly don't know what the technical term for it is. I'm sure there is a technical term for either the filming style or the combination of editing, but I'm just telling you, like, it looks bad. It looks really bad, and especially when in moments, great example, Nicholas Hoult, he's in the Aryan Brotherhood. He is trying to splinter off, so he kind of, not stages a coup, but like he stands up during one of the meetings and rallies people to walk out with him. In these moments, you can barely see who else is in the crowd, and I feel like these are moments that we need to kind of digest of, like, what are other people thinking about him? What is going on in the background?
It's a very
where
weird
it's just
technique.
Completely
very
taken
weird
away.
technique.
I know. Like I said, I hope it wasn't going to dip outside of Zack Snyder's films. Now that I'm seeing it elsewhere, I just hope it gets dropped. I really don't love the trend in the filming, especially when there is great, cinematography elsewhere in the film.
Yeah, it's like ever since Zoom calls, especially like post-COVID, where you could blur out your background
Right.
or you can kind of pick your opacity. I don't know. We should come up. We're gonna have to form a name for that if we keep saying
maybe
it.
it's the Zoom call trick. It's blur your background. Go on mute, blur your background, and zone out for the next hour. But I don't know. It's for sure a nitpick, but it was something that I definitely noticed in a lot of scenes. Something larger was off for me, though. It was hard to pin down. I think some of the pacing to the crime unraveling showed how just incompetent the detective work was at times. I'll always go back to A Few Good Men, where even in our review we talked about it, that Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon, it's good tension in the courtroom because they are of equal competency. There's stakes because they're both sharp. Here, the crime was too off balance. The detectives and the FBI, man, they are stumble after stumble, and it just like it sapped some of the stakes out of the film for me. I can't tell you how many times the tension resolves exactly the same way on repeat for 2 hours. I can certainly understand, again, if the true story played out that way, but moments in the film are just extended many times due to something being missed or a glancing mistake, and it just feels unsatisfying. Shootouts, another example of this as well, feeling a little weightless or even on rails to get to the next scene. And I think that's what stung the most for me, because I am a very, very easy sell when it comes to any kind of heist movie. And still, somehow, this wasn't really doing it for me. We're going to go ahead and give The Order a 63.
Okay, 63. A good movie, but I think we both were expecting more from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's not getting the buzz that maybe I thought it was going to be.
Totally.
And it's another reason why I kind of didn't watch it this week. Because had you been getting some buzz, or like, I don't know, Jude Law and supporting actor or something like that, or I don't know, it's just, that's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is something there. It's based on a true story.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So it's like, it's got teeth.
Absolutely. So, I don't know. Maybe it was in the task of adapting this specific novel from 1989.
Yeah.
That maybe the source material was a little plain in how it depicted, certain action elements that couldn't translate well. But something there, I was just like, man, this is serviceable, not really clicking.
What did we give the Juror number 2 last week?
I want to say
that like
58, 59?
Was that in the 50s?
Yeah, I think so.
But kind of close, similar.
Nikki Holt.
Nikki Holt. Okay, you give it a 54. Okay, much worse.
Oh, yeah, much worse. Okay. I think that's where it was floating around initially.
Okay, so still a Pacific Northwest film. Let's keep our eyes out for Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
Maybe we'll make a compilation.
I'm down.
All right, so let's continue now. This next film is called A Different Man. And again, wanted to cover it because Sebastian Stan won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, Comedy, or Musical.
Yes.
Because they break that up. I mean, I don't think this was on anybody's radar. Sebastian Stan is somewhat being talked about and is being included in a lot of kind of actor interview stuff.
Yes.
Because not only did he do this movie, A Different Man, he was also in that Trump movie, The Apprentice, with him, and then Jeremy Strong was also kind of lead actor in that film as well. So Sebastian Stan is just kind of like being talked about a bit. So this is called A Different Man. I think it's very obscure to people. This does not have a lot of marketing at all. Jump right into it. And what is this film about?
Folks, I have to start with actually something like embarrassing, and that I was speaking to multiple people in my life about this movie throughout the week, Tom included, fully unaware how I've been mixing this up with the monkey music biopic Better Man that is out right now. And boy, I mean, it's just 3 separate text chains. I just put my foot in my mouth entirely.
I want the listeners to know I am pushing Vin to cover a better Man, by the way.
I'm glad you said it.
Okay.
I'm glad you said it, because I am not looking forward to covering that in the least
Well,
bit.
it's getting phenomenal reviews.
It's crazy.
Anyway, but yes, this is A Different Man.
Yeah, it's a different man. So, very, very different. This is the third feature film from writer-director Aaron Skimberg? What is it?
I had Schimberg.
Schimberg? Okay. While I haven't seen any of his other films, his previous project is very important to note. 2018's Chained for Life stars Adam Pearson, the sadly real-life deformed actor in this as well, and begins their collaboration on these projects that are seemingly trying to tackle this very uncomfortable subject. Pearson's first role actually was in a favorite of mine, 2013's Under the Skin. And while Sebastian Stan has been getting all of the recognition for his prosthetic performance, Pearson, in addition to many casting choices, informed the message of this film wonderfully. This is not also, I mean, I'll get into it a little bit, but this is not your, like, just trying to pluck the heartstrings about elephantitis or deformity or anything like that. This is so much more than that, and like was actually funny, was a great movie.
I loosely knew about the film. It was being promoted. It was being more promoted like in the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
is when these two to get the two actors together was sitting down and getting, and then I just kind of like it fell off the table.
Yep.
So then for it to be jumped up again, and then I was like, wait, it's in for comedy or musical?
Right, yeah, it's like,
what? I mean, so is The Martian, but because the Golden Globes is a joke.
That's always your favorite. That is always your favorite.
But very interesting.
Bag of The Martian.
Right away, I'm like, oh, what is this movie? This movie is something totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say, I mean, and I'll say it, in just a moment as well. I had some real hesitation in watching this film just for that visual reaction. I can't tell you how much I loved this movie.
Wow, very cool. Okay.
A Different Man is, honestly, a slight body horror. I think that's where the A24 kind of comes into play. but mostly a dark comedy that leans headfirst into the discomfort of seeing deformities and examines the fight or flight we all have in interacting with the strange. Sebastian Stan plays Edward, a lonely, struggling actor with an extremely deformed face that understandably defines his outlook on life and the handful of relationships that he has. His new neighbor is a cute playwright, and while initially a sliver of hope for him, quickly spirals into desperation. With nothing to lose, he undergoes an experimental medication that lets him experience the world through a different lens and allows him to see what his life might be like as a quote-unquote normal man. But quickly he discovers the many masks we all wear when confronted with sympathy, with guilt, and sees the true colors of the world around him for the first time. I've never seen David Lynch's The Elephant Man, an award-winning film in itself, but I completely understand staying away from this type of movie because it is just visually disturbing. That is exactly why this almost didn't make the cut this week, and I can't stress enough, I'm so glad that it did make the cut this week. But folks, the brilliance of this story is that it is directly about that awkward feeling itself, and putting us in the shoes of someone that can experience both sides of the coin in mostly a comedic way. I mean, this is dark comedy just because it's very tragic, and we almost assume it to be tragic.
Right.
But it is a comedy, ultimately. I really mean brilliance, too. This story is able to twist the knife in multiple ways, and increasingly over the runtime, you will be shocked at the revelations just as Edward is shocked as the revelations. Also, this reminded me a lot of last year's Fever Dream, Beau is Afraid, in how life is portrayed kind of as a nightmare through the eyes of our main character, which just kind of further drives home this dark comedy angle. Very unexpected in the ways a dark comedy can be. I don't think we've covered it on the podcast yet, but like something like In Bruges. You look at In Bruges and it's just like, how good can this be? But by the end, like everyone loves that movie, because it is so unexpected in its comedy.
Yeah, the way it's dealt, that very adult comedy, not in-your-face comedy. You can even say the same thing with In Bruges to Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh, for sure.
The same director, same actors.
Absolutely.
It's that vibe, and it is that it's dry. You have to find the humor. I don't even know. I know there's a certain type of word for it that I can't come to my head, but that is some of the best.
Yeah.
Now that I think for you and I, the more in-your-face comedy we see as we go on,
we grow numb to it.
We grow numb to it, and it's just, it doesn't hit like it used to.
Yeah. True. I think that's every moviegoer as well. I mean, there's a reason why there's something that they think comedies can't make it in the theaters anymore, and it gets pumped to streaming.
Yeah, and I hope that does change a little bit. Normal comedies come back, but it may be a wit comedy.
Yeah.
This has wit to it.
Absolutely.
And that's when I think about In Bruges and Banshees of Inisherin. There's a cleverness to it.
And maybe trying to say something as well. Again, this is not really like overbearing in its social message or its kind of like empathetic angle, trying to make you feel bad or something like that. If anything, that's the exact opposite. It is a comedy about the awkwardness we all feel if you were to see someone unfortunately deformed or anything like that, and leans so heavily into that we're able to kind of just meet it all on equal ground, equal footing. Sebastian Stan really just shows a huge amount of range here, sacrificing his and any actor's biggest feature to deliver on a real character performance. Beyond the prosthetics that he puts on his face, it's in his body language that we just really get to know how this character thinks and how this worldview of this character affects how they see themselves. And masterfully throughout the film, he is able to show this in very, very telling moments that even by the moments that we're seeing him necessarily without any prosthetics, there's something there that he was really able to embody Edward in a very interesting way. And I gotta say, I've watched now a lot of what we'll call kind of Oscar baity type of films over the last 2 weeks, maybe even the last 4 weeks if you really want to consider it. But this was really the only performance that I was like, wow, this was something like worth it on its own to check out the performance.
Really?
Yeah. Because not only, I think almost remove the physical transformation from this, it's what he does specifically when he doesn't have the makeup on that is still so true to the character.
Wow, okay.
Really impressive. Adam Pearson, though, let me just say, wow. He is used to absolute perfection in this. It is well into spoilers, so I can't really talk about it too much, but the way this character is used, I was stunned by it. The way he contrasts decisions Edward has made in the story was just so great, and so, again, just like this movie, you think you got it figured out, and then there's just another knife turn in your gut, and it's just like, what? Now this is about this? Huh. Like, really, really impressive.
I did not think this would take you on as much as a ride.
Yeah. It's something else.
Yeah.
I thought this was phenomenal. I think you could definitely be cynical and say this boils down to something cliche like, oh, it's about what's on the inside. Mm-hmm. But there's just so much more to it than that. This speaks to the human experience itself, both for how we see others and how we see ourselves. And through it, like I said, we can meet this unthinkable idea, this incomprehensible idea of having a deformity at this level and meet it on equal ground, meet it on equal footing. I think this film thrilled me so much as well because out of all these nominated films that we've covered in the past couple weeks, it really had a worth itness to how the story unfolded, and that's often the best indicator for what makes me excited to recommend a film so strongly. We're going to go ahead and give A Different Man an 82.
Whoa! It's one of the best movies of the year.
I think so.
It's one of the best movies of the year.
It really is.
This one snuck up on you.
It snuck up entirely to the point that I was like avoiding it. Not even like, oh, we're not going to cover it. No, I was like not wanting to watch this film, and it flipped me around this positively.
Oh my God. Did you see this when we saw The Brutalist together?
No. This was the last film I watched this week. Yep.
Wow, 82% for A Different Man. Wow.
Yeah.
Where'd you watch this, by the way?
This was another Amazon Prime, but rentable.
Okay.
And I think will eventually land on HBO Max just because of the
A24 thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, an 82% for A Different Man.
I really think,
it's an hour and 52 minutes, by the way. It's rated R, and boy.
Unexpected. Completely unexpected. Again,
totally
I was trying to dodge this film.
Yeah. I just thought you were going to say relatively good performance, kind of an ass story.
Sure,
I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing anything about this, except for the fact that he's starting to get some. Once when he got the nomination, he is getting some interviews, and then of course he won. But again, he won for comedy musical, which somebody takes that as serious. Wow, A Different Man, Not a Better Man, the Monkey Music movie. Two very, very different movies.
Two very different films.
A Different Man, you can get it on video on demand. 82%, Finn.
Yes.
So I got to watch this.
I think so.
Should I watch it before the Tom Dailies?
Maybe. It really depends on how much you got left to watch. If you really want to like tackle all, after above a certain score. But it's your call. I would say though, this really was some of the best of the year.
I have to say, so here's my thing. I think there's been a flip from this year to last year. I think this year's female performances have been like crazy strong.
Yes.
And there's like a dozen performances we can talk to. I think on the male, especially male leading side, I think we're lacking.
I agree. And I think Sebastian Stan, I honestly have to put a lot more thought into it. But
he's in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, I like that.
Yeah.
He's got some skin in the game. We got some action now going on.
Yeah.
In that category. Excellent. Okay, so 82%, A Different Man. I'm sure maybe it'll come up. We'll be talking about it next week on the Tom Dailies. Let's keep it going, though. This next film is called A Real Pain. Beginning of the year, I heard about this film because I think this was a festival release.
Okay.
It might have even been...
I want to say it was wide release around October.
I know, but I think it was Sundance.
Okay,
and Sundance is in January.
Sure.
So I think it was like an early release. I heard some rumblings about performances in this one. Again, didn't hear a damn thing. I didn't even know when it came out until pretty much a few weeks ago when it finally started to get talked about. And then Kieran Culkin?
Yes.
Kieran Culkin then, of course, won the award for supporting actor.
Yes.
Correct? Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is called A Real Pain. It's directed by Jesse Eisenberg, but it's a quick hour and 30. I mean, every movie so far is sub 2 hours.
Yep.
This is a quick hour 30. And get into what this is about. Did he deserve the win? Did he not? The performances. Jesse Eisenberg is trying to go after the triple threat on this one.
Yes, he is.
Jump us into A Real Pain.
That triple threat here is kind of my first thoughts out of the gate, and then also after seeing the film, being written, directed, and starring Jesse Eisenberg, one of my most hated actors. Honestly, I just can't let go of his the way he did Lex Luthor. So horrifically, but
now, you did love The Social Network, though.
Yes. He really is. I say that half joking because he is able to really just kill certain performances when the role is kind of matching his natural neurotic style to it. And boy, oh boy, do we have that type of role. I mean, I guess he wrote it for himself, but a little bit of nepotism, but kind of a perfect role that he wrote for himself. Writing and directing wise, this is his second time around, the first being 2022's When You Finish Saving the World, something I frankly had no idea existed. But all the snark aside, this movie proves Eisenberg has some serious skills, as not only is he able to kind of juggle all these hats in the production, but able to create a comedy experience that is uniquely and very intentionally grating. I don't want to fluff this up too much, but while structure-wise, this can be compared to some road trip type of buddy comedies, it is very unique because it's comedic, but its goals are kind of to annoy you first before the comedy and before the punch of the script kind of comes through.
These two actors sound perfect for me. Jesse Eisenberg, because I feel like he's grating for everyone, or slightly annoyed.
Right.
Slightly annoying. And then Kieran Culkin has just kind of made this his MO for a bit.
Absolutely.
So, they're the perfect people for the role.
Is. Yeah, it's some great casting going on here. I mean, again, one of them is the director, so it's like, all right, whatever. But it's a match made in heaven. A Real Pain is, like I said, a buddy road trip comedy through Poland, and I would say my biggest praise is that it lends itself to a perfect character study of these two Jewish cousins going on a semi-heavy but also kind of semi-light Holocaust tour with a group of strangers.
Right.
Yeah, so already out of the gate, that brief summary, like you see how it's being pulled in like different directions, Our two cousins are, of course, Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, and defining them as polar opposites is the entire focus of the film. Introverted versus extroverted, intuition versus intelligence, and emotional versus apathetic. The story shows the deep contrast between these two by making this trip a living nightmare. Most of all through Culkin's deeply troubled character, making everyone on the trip see how much of a real pain he really is. That's exactly where I want to kind of start cracking into this, is on Culkin. I haven't seen him in Succession. I obviously kind of respect him as an actor, and from what I've seen recently, I always actually go back to Scott Pilgrim. He plays Wallace, the roommate, and is great in that.
Oh, that's very funny.
But I can't just tell you how unreal it is, how well-suited Kieran Culkin is for this role. Structurally, this type of road trip comedy has plenty of great films representing it. Mainly, I would point to John Hughes' classic Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where you get kind of one stick in the mud, one social butterfly, but that's the annoying one, and it's between the two. Like I said before, this film has a very uniquely grating experience that is the whole purpose. Culkin's character is conflict manifest. I mean, conflict at the most agonizing, inappropriate, publicly heard moments that will no doubt make your skin crawl at least once. I mean, Tom, I said this on the ride down to the Brutalist, but the secondhand embarrassment that you experience from this film might make this more horrific for you than Nosferatu. Like, this is a horror movie for some people, I would imagine. Like,
this is perfect for him. Because, I know him from Succession, that's just who he is. He makes your skin crawl. He's just super awkward, and he also is unapologetic.
Yes.
But then can be super pathetic, so then you feel bad for him.
Yep.
Yeah.
That same mix of emotions, exactly the focus here. And I mean, what I need to stress about it is that it's still 100% intentional. For every crack that shows in these outbursts the characters, or his character specifically, has, we quickly start gaining insight into both characters by how they respond to these moments, these outbursts, and why they need one another. So, in the moment, there's definitely times that I was kind of almost hating the film in the sense of like, oh my God, like imagining myself in the shoes.
Yeah.
But for what the film is trying to portray and what the film is trying to communicate is so much more. And again, what drives home, what is so successful is that you're putting these two characters that are the subject of the character study in this like tight little confined tour through Poland with strangers and awkward moments, but we gain a lot of insight through these characters through this pressure cooker that they're in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Out of an equally good acting performance, though, I think the hat that Eisenberg wears best is writing, believe it or not. The structure and skeleton of how this movie is set up is really the most brilliant part. Once again, cramming the character study into this international tour and just kind of forces us in the yuckiest parts of like travelers and bystanders witnessing these messy public fights.
Yeah.
And, again, that secondhand embarrassment of just like, Christ, if I was in this, it makes it makes your skin crawl a little bit. But my best pitch for this movie, and more importantly, Eisenberg's writing here, is kind of describing it as like a seesaw of tension for the audience that, believe it or not, it's not always about hating Culkin's character. Sometimes you hate Eisenberg's character too.
Mm-hmm.
And the slowly kind of shifting from one side to another, hating one side of another, is why this was so interesting, that seesaw effect, if you will.
It does kind of make sense because the more I think about the film, the more it feels like it would have to rely on the writing and how it's set up. Because it seems like a song, it seems like a dance that these characters have to do. Plus you have these other, because you said they're on a tour, so we're getting the same people.
Yep.
Right? Like then you're getting used to everybody.
Yeah, they're getting used to the outbursts.
Right, they need to be kind of interwoven and come in and out. And it can almost, something about this kind of seems like it could be like a poor play. Like a bad performed play.
Right.
But when stitched together, or like a really good puzzle that's able to come together, that's all in the writing.
Absolutely.
For all that to kind of be interwoven.
Absolutely. And that's why I really think I was most impressed with it. I mean, his 2022 film, I don't know, it kind of looks like indie slop. But when I saw this film, I was thinking the same thing, honestly. And the writing, impressed me to such a degree that I was like, all right, maybe I'll go back and check that out. Also kind of add in this thread of like a modern Jewish experience and a dash of generational trauma. And you can just see how this script just stands above every other aspect in this film, performances included.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting to... I don't know. This obviously wouldn't be an adapted screenplay, but I'd be curious to see if Eisenberg is front-runner come Oscar time for Best Script or Best Screenplay for this.
Oh, I wonder if that would be on there.
Yeah, because it is such a dry, almost like a Woody Allen kind of style, just like, well, it's got really decent writing, I mean, the same thing here. I feel like it could just kind of hit for that kind of crowd.
I'll bring up the same thing I brought up with The Order. Wit always does really good with screenplay stuff. So... Well, that's true. We'll kind of see where it lands up. I never really have guesses for the screenplay because you have original screenplay and then adapted, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I never really think about guesses for that.
Yeah, true.
But then when you see it, it's just like, okay, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Like last year's, I think there were some standouts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is this say Zach Braff wannabe? I'm sorry.
Oh,
is Zach Braff a wannabe this film.
Yes.
Okay.
In the type of indie slop, not to reduce it too much, but yeah, absolutely. Also, actually, go back to last week. We Live in Time is absolutely like what Zach Braff wishes he could make. But folks, I'll say this was a difficult one to score because, like we touched on for some of Sean Baker's films recently, there is a certain level of natural hatred tied to the experience. There is a certain level of like, is intentionally trying to kind of rustle your feathers to deliver a message. Once again, exactly like Baker's films, that feeling being 100% intended. But that's where both of our leads' performances, they elevate things, and I would say worthy of checking out regardless of the awards praise this undoubtedly will be getting. We're going to go ahead and give A Real Pain a 74.
74%? It's a good movie right there.
I think so. I'm a
little surprised. So why is it not higher? Why is it not upper 70s?
That's exactly where I was kind of bouncing back and forth on it, because I think it landed in the 70s because there was so much there that I had to praise, just like
writing
so
and
much
acting.
that I would actually just like talk to people in real life about and say, hey, you should probably check out this movie. But I think on the lower end, it was just like I had trouble kind of placing the experience of just like how viscerally I hated Culkin's character at times, and him directly.
I totally get it.
He's so his own self.
It's the Skylar effect. I totally get it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if anything, piggybacking exactly what we said, I think it was for Florida Project specifically, because I was kind of coming back to that film.
You get so frustrated with the mother and have such a dislike towards it.
Yeah, but I think as a critic, I want to kind of just see through that and what are the means to the message that it's trying to deliver. Is this worth it?
Wow.
So
okay, 74% for A Real Pain. Once again, it's on video on demand. Check it out, rent it on Prime if you want. A lot of these movies that we're kind of catching up for the end of the year. A reason why we have to play catch up is because they were so unavailable. At least now there's someone available if you're willing to dish out, some money just to do the rent, or if you want. So before that, Vin, I'm just going to remind people that we are going off the value for value models. We don't have any producers for this week. That's all right. But just remember, folks, that Vin and I, we're not going to have any advertising here on the Daily Ratings, the podcast or the website. We're also not going to have like paywalls on the site where you have to give us money to access more content, or Patreon where give us a certain amount of money every month and you get more content. Everything Vin and I do, it's out there. Everyone can basically get it and have it for free. But the idea is, are you enjoying it? Are you using it? Are you using the website, stopping in and having a good time listening to the podcast? We look at that as value in your pocket. Can you send us value back in our pocket? It's a value for value model. You go to thedailyratings.com and you head to the donations tab, and through your monetary support, you become an actual legitimate producer of the Daily Ratings. That's kind of how we're doing it. We're producer supported, not advertising supported. So when you donate in any amount that you want, you become a legitimate, actual credited producer of the Daily Ratings. Just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you're a producer of the project. So big or small, there's a big value for value button there, whether it's whether it's $5, $50, $500, every donation or any amount that you send in, it means the world to us. Everybody's on their own finances and got their own thing going on, and that's kind of why we're doing it this way. And when you become a producer, when you do donate in, make sure to send a note along with it. This can be questions, comments, critiques. You have something you want to say, suggestions, send it in. Just send us an email. You can email us at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. That's our email address. If you don't want your name to be mentioned, just say, hey, just keep me anonymous for this donation and this note. We'll just say, hey, anonymous wrote in, or, producer anonymous, whatever. That's totally fine. But really, it can be an Ask Us anything you want to say about the show. Just go for it. We want to hear from you, especially if you're going to help produce the show. So again, we're producer supported. It's a value for value model. Head to thedailyratings.com and go to the donations tab. And just a reminder, folks, this is kind of our last of the 2024 films. Next week is the big Tom Daly Awards. We're going to go through kind of just the year of the podcast, the year in film, and everything we covered. There is well over 200 films that we covered on the podcast. So we're going to wrap it all up. We're going to give out our awards. We're going to give the specialty awards. We're going to look to 2025. Vin and I have some major announcements for the Daily Ratings going forward for next year as well that we're excited about. So please, it's going to be a great time. Tune in to the Tom Dailies next week. All right, Vin, let's go to the one that's actually in theaters right now.
The big boy.
Yes, the movie I've been bitching about for 3 weeks. finally was available close to us. So we
Yep.
took a trip down, and we saw it in proper 70mm IMAX, because that's all it was available in.
right.
And now it's absolutely going to get more of a wider release. They're bringing the substance back in theaters.
Wow.
Because of Demi Moore.
Sure.
So because Adrian Brody won, and it was nominated for so many, and it's going to be nominated for so many Oscars, it's going to get a bigger rollout. It
Interesting.
just might take a little bit longer to get to a theater near you.
Sure.
Because we have listeners all over the place.
I also heard, obviously, with the wildfires, Oscars got pushed, so there's probably going to be even
The
more
nominations got
bandwidth.
pushed.
Oh, the nominations got pushed. Okay.
Yes, the nominations got pushed. If I was them, I'd probably just do it in a different city at this point.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Even though, I know like it's Hollywood or nothing,
sure.
but it's like, well, you might as well go to Atlanta or Budapest or Italy or Toronto. Oh, Budapest is the place to shoot now.
Oh, really?
Everyone's filming in
interesting.
Budapest.
Interesting.
And listen, where are we going to get those tax breaks?
Yeah, well.
For instance, The Brutalist wasn't filmed in Doylestown.
Yeah.
It was filmed in Budapest and Italy.
Yeah, that wasn't filmed in the good old PA.
Anyway, so it is going to get a bigger rollout. I'll start by saying right away, I love the fact that we saw it in theaters.
Yes.
Producer Sean was just like, it's just like a drama. Like, I can just wait for it. And I said, I told Vin on the way home, we got out of the theater, and I said, I'm so happy we saw it in theaters.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
made an impact.
Absolutely.
Before we get into it, I want to just talk about where just the film, how it was made, production stories a little bit.
Sure,
I'll
yeah.
bring us up to the film, and then you can kind of take it away a bit.
Absolutely.
But basically, this is directed by Brady Corbett, who we don't know really. He hasn't directed all that much in the past. And he has been trying to get this movie made for years and years and years. They had the script ready to go, and they were supposed to start filming in 2020 with a completely different cast, by the way. Like every single cast
yes.
member, totally different.
Yep.
It got pushed back. It got pushed back again. Then it got pushed back again. First cover COVID, and then he had said there was pregnancies and deaths of family members and stuff. It eventually... 3 years later, in March of 2023, finally started filming with a brand new cast, with, of course, Adrian Brody and then Guy Pearce heading it that. The film was filmed using VistaVision.
Okay.
VistaVision is Paramount came up with a new way to film movies in the 50s.
Okay.
And there was it was kind of a battle of, there were multiple companies trying to make new formats. Paramount's version was VistaVision. The first film to come out in movie theaters for VistaVision was White Christmas.
No way.
Believe it or not, yes.
Wow.
And the way VistaVision is weird because it has you can play around with the aspect ratio.
Okay.
So it has a wider aspect ratio, so your screens are wider. But especially for screens back then, you can also play with the film and the second remaining copies and make it change up the aspect ratio if you want to, and make it more boxy if you want. You can also blow it up, and that's why for this, it's really easy to get an IMAX format.
Yeah.
So-
And I will say there is something to the verticality of the screen. Obviously, it's a movie about buildings and architecture. I mean,
big,
there is
yeah.
something to that as far as like this being the right format for the story it's trying to tell.
So, and additionally with VistaVision, it wasn't used for long. Paramount's last film in VistaVision was in 1961. It was One Eye Jacks.
Oh, no way.
Which the Brando movie, which we
Holy
covered,
shit.
the Brando Western.
Wow.
And then the very last time an American film was shot in VistaVision was in 1963.
4?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just called My Six Loves.
Oh,
But what
okay,
I'm saying is, it's been.
I thought that was a dramatic pause.
Yes.
For like, you're not going to believe this.
No, well, you're not going to believe. It's been 61 years since a film has
Yeah,
been shot at it,
very true.
and they resurrected it. And the director Corbett wanted to do it. He said, "I wanted to shoot the film and technology that was invented during the time period. This mostly takes place in the 1950s.
Yeah,
This was created in the early 1950s.
Sure, I like that.
Another thing with VistaVision, which is really interesting, is apparently its resolution is really good. So although the last full film to be shot was in 63, because the resolution is so good, you can play with special effects better with it. So all the original 3 Star Wars, all the special effects scenes
We're done at this.
was in VistaVision.
Wow.
It was even used for some Nolan films. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World used
Wow.
VistaVision in a couple shots. Like, are there zooming shots?
Yeah,
in that one?
absolutely, absolutely.
That's VistaVision.
Wow.
So this is the first film to be
interesting.
fully shot with the technology. Oh, Industrial Light and Magic, they still use VistaVision. It was in it was in Crystal Skull,
Wow.
Indiana Jones. even with all the special effects and the digital cameras, especially the Lucas Heavy digital, they found ways why this was still necessary.
Very interesting. And I certainly like the element of just like it being a product of the 50s. This takes place majority in the 50s.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about it is it shoots horizontally. So, for instance, normal film obviously it's in rolls and it's vertical. This, it goes sideways, the film, while you're shooting it.
Interesting.
Which also I think has something to do with the opening credits because they're sideways. They're going across the screen.
You're right. Yeah.
And the only other cool thing is, like I said, this is the first film in 61 years to be shot in this. Our next film to be completely shot in this is Paul Thomas Anderson used VistaVision.
It's coming back
for his brand new film, which comes out this summer. There's rumblings that they're going to push it a year, but still Warner Brothers said it's coming out in summer. So it's having this weird renaissance moment.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that makes a difference or it should make a difference to the movie itself. Like maybe it probably shouldn't because like what did it actually create?
Yeah.
But there's something really special about the project with how long it took. It had they had the worst time trying to get funding for it. That got flung all over the place. Less than $10 million, and that should always be remembered when you do watch it because it feels like an $80 million movie.
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
But it's not. It's less than 10 mil.
Yeah.
And that brings us to, like I said, it was finally shot in 2023. It came out just a few weeks ago. It is The Brutalist. Adrian Brody helming it. Vin, take it away. And I'll jump in whenever I want to.
Here we go. I got to stretch for this one. Well, with an overture, a real 15-minute intermission, and a release schedule that consumed the entire day of planning for us, The Brutalist is a 3.5-hour epic that demands your attention both in its scale and, of course, the hype that is going around on the film before you've even seen it. Director-writer Brady Corbett doesn't have a huge amount under his belt, like you said, Tom, but he is turning away from a solid 10 years of acting for himself, which I found very interesting. I would like to hear him speak in some capacity of why he completely has turned away from acting and gone into this directing habit, which is great to see, of course. But if the production journey, and certainly what you illustrated for us, Tom, if the production journey shows anything for the film, is that filmmaking is equal parts passion, grit, and a little bit of luck, honestly. There's a lot to unpack with this film, even if the runtime was chopped in half. The Brutalist has been in pre-production since like 2018 to 2020, like you said, with a lot of casting swaps over the years. Corbett, speaking about the film, he says it's trying to celebrate the triumphs of our ancestors. My assumption the entire time of this story, with that in mind, was that it was some sort of a true story. Well, mind-blowingly, it's not.
Ben and I both were a little shocked by this.
Oh,
coming out of the theater.
To the point of embarrassment, I mean, a lot of PA towns are referenced, and to the point that we're leaning over to each other and be like, oh, we got to visit this. We got to take a drive over.
We literally were like, oh, we got to take a field trip to some of these areas.
Exactly.
To find out, no.
Not at all.
They don't exist.
Budapest in Italy. This is extremely confusing for us, you know, when every 5 seconds Pennsylvania is referenced and plugged in some way, including us, you know, kind of thinking it would be a quick drive over to check out like this Brutalist architectural masterpiece, in our backyard.
That we haven't heard about in the 30 years of living
exactly.
here. Yeah.
But, I mean, Christ, they should have called this M. Night Shyamalan's The Brutalist with how many real-time, real PA cities are referenced in this.
It was fantastic.
It's unreal.
It's not even that many. It's really just 2 PA cities that are very close to us.
And drilled home.
I mean, let me just say this. There is a classic kind of 50s promo for Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Welcome to Pennsylvania, where Vin jumped out of his seat and was elbowing me in excitement when this little...
Because, it came up with, a picture of a keystone, coming at the screen. I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
And then they mentioned Adrian Brody with his accented voice saying the word Doylestown 40 times in the movie. It was beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Because it's an Eastern PA movie, really.
Yeah, absolutely. This is steel country, This is... But unreal, and Maybe, honestly, a little frustrating that it's not a true story, but I guess, that's besides the fact. With that said, The Brutalist is an immigrant story, one of assimilation for survival and kind of a struggle to find one's place in the American dream. The story is separated into two main parts. Part one, titled The Enigma of Arrival, taking place from 1947 to 1952. Part two, called The Hardcore of Beauty. The Hardcore of Beauty. Interesting wording there. Taking place from 1953 to 1960. And then finally, we get an epilogue set in 1980. Adrian Brody plays Laszlo Toth, a visionary Jewish-Hungarian architect that is displaced by World War II and struggles to find work to match his caliber of skills. Simply trying to survive, he looks to his family and friends to see how they all fall in line and secure their own spot in the land of opportunity. His brutalist architecture stands in direct contrast to this force of assimilation. Concrete, unwavering, and without facade, Laszlo's hope is that his buildings stand the test of time, remaining unaltered by the changing lives that fill them. Almost no man shares Laszlo's same vision, but one man respects how visionary he truly is, and throughout the film we see how his life is altered by being at the right time in the right place. I would say, right out of the gate, just this being such a pivotal moment for any kind of character's life, post World War II. There's a lot of strong themes of ambition that strikes a similar chord, at least for me, to the 2007 film There Will Be Blood, where kind of opportunity is cross-sectioned by very dominant personalities using characters for what they covet, what they want. These characters, whether they wear it on their sleeves or not, everyone kind of wants something.
There's an angle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not about everyone using each other, but I feel like there is a thread of this that is critical of the American dream in the sense that everyone's a stepping stone to someone else in some way, you know? We see that right out of the gate, actually, with Laszlo's first job working. Is it his cousin?
Yeah, it's his cousin.
Yeah. He's designing furniture out of a nonsense furniture store in
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, yeah, in Kensington. It's probably not still standing if it wasn't all. I was like, we got to visit that place too. But there's something there that's a very significant thread to the film and really grows to be Guy Pearce's character directly. Guy Pearce plays Harrison Lee Van Buren, quite a mouthful. Even down to his last name, I was like, Van Buren. That's got to be a real person. That's got to be a real rich family.
Yeah, there's a lot of nods to real people.
Yeah,
even like Laszlo, it's like a lot of references to some other architects. The more reseach I did into it,
interesting.
It's very love letter ish.
Okay, interesting,
but all made up.
Yeah, but it's not true. He plays this cutthroat capitalist that is about as sharp as his mustache, but ultimately doomed to appreciate great works of art, lacking the vision to create himself. And the best part about this story, in my opinion, was this dynamic between these two characters, because at any one moment their interaction will shift drastically between many different feelings. It was almost kind of a predatory relationship in an odd way. Admiration morphs into hatred, pity swaps back and forth between guilt, and opportunity into blame, ultimately, as a very large project that Laszlo undertakes by request from Guy Pearce's character is... I don't know. At times it feels like Laszlo is the architect, and at times it feels like Laszlo has to shoulder the blame for every aspect of the project, which, hey, maybe that's the role of an architect. If there's one thing I wanted more out of the ending of this film specifically, it was just in this smaller scale relationship, in this lightening between these two characters. And I'm not sure I was very satisfied by the ending point of this. I mean, I'll get into it a little bit more, but what are your thoughts there? I know we're kind of on the same page, but anything you marinated on?
No, I mean, we were so on... I mean, as soon as we left the theater, we started kind of delving into it. We were focused on the ending. And I was focused specifically kind of on the last 20 minutes of it. And we've definitely felt the same way of we would have taken it in another direction because we didn't feel fully satisfied satisfied.
Yep.
Definitely the first. It's funny because obviously there's always 3 acts to a film. This definitely felt like 2 specific acts.
Yes.
I was thinking very much of Martin Scorsese and the way he describes the journey he wanted the audience to take, or he wanted to take the audience on in Goodfellas.
Oh, in Goodfellas.
The rising and falling of it, the building you up to tear you down type of deal. But and there was a resolution there that I think really could have hit better and given the audience what they want, which for you and I was especially kind of these 2 characters.
Yeah.
It kind of fell flat, a little bit of a definitely, I mean, the last 2 minutes of the film. I mean, Vin and I had, like, we were doing
jaw dropped.
The dog tilted head, like, okay, interesting choices.
Yeah.
But it didn't sully the whole experience.
Yeah, right.
But there's like a lightning bolt in this movie, and it's the 2 of them, Guy Pearce and Brody, playing with each other.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I just wanted so much more of that. I mean, we get a lot. It's obviously a long movie, but...
Can I talk about when that hit the most for me?
Sure.
Specifically, it's not like a spoiler or anything like that. Because you're kind of waiting for these 2 to finally get a moment, a real moment together. And so they have it, and they're talking with one another, and there's a conversation. And I didn't tell you this on the ride home, but I immediately, while watching it, was thinking of the movie Sideways.
Oh, really?
Because there's a scene with Paul Giamatti and kind of his love interest in that.
Yep.
I forget the actress's name. I'm sorry. There's a point where they're sitting down and they're talking about Pinot Noir. He shuts up for a full, 2 minutes, and she just goes off on why she likes Pinot Noir. And it's just like this incredible monologue, and it's like crazy. It's like so well done.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how is Paul Giamatti going to hit this tennis ball back at her? But it's Paul Giamatti. And then Paul Giamatti gets into why he likes Pinot Noir. And both just have these complete separate monologues that just complement each other, and yet singularly such good performances.
Oh, yeah,
so good.
absolutely.
And that's what these 2 have together.
Yeah,
Guy
absolutely.
Pearce delivers a great line, and finally it's like he solidified him getting this part almost, and Brody did the same thing.
For sure. It's in that,
I love that
post-dinner brandy scene that they're sitting down.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. There is something there is just like, wow, they are on their own and still collaborating.
Could have watched it for 20 more minutes.
Yeah.
Again, it's watching a ping pong. It's watching a tennis match.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Adrian Brody, though, I would say was truly, truly excellent in this, being just like a tragedy face mask come to life. Sometimes when he cries, like his face just morphs into just like the eyebrows.
He's so good.
He really is. I mean, he's got it down. But he just submerging himself so deeply into his character. I think the not necessarily the language work, but the accent work that he has through that is probably the best example of just like how submerged he is into this character.
It's a heavy accent, and man, does he sell it.
Absolutely.
That man does not let up.
Believe me, Doylestown is not a Yiddish word, But the comparison everyone's making... you like that? The comparison everyone is making it's very reminiscent of 2002's The Pianist, which he won Best Actor for as well. I haven't seen that film, but I can guarantee he doesn't rip cigs like he does in this movie. I mean, man, this is a smoker's film. There should have been a smoking section in the IMAX theater, especially for us, drive time getting down there. But I really did enjoy his performance here, though, especially in kind of the messier depictions of immigration in late 40s and early 50s, not being this dreamland of opportunity that so many are coming over to experience, and kind of the huge sadness he was able to bring into that framing. That
it's both, though. It is both.
What do you mean?
As far as that elation, that happiness to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, the opportunity. Okay.
Yeah. I think a good example of that mix of sad and happy and opportunity all kind of like really gelling together is the soundtrack, honestly. The soundtrack I would kind of describe, I mean, it's not really listenable, but it's more, I'm praising it more so for the feelings it evokes, and these are those feelings, It's a kind of like noise jazz, and with many industrial elements sprinkled through chaotic and especially uplifting moments. The very first track, if you do want to check it out, folks, is just called Overture, The Ship Over, or something like that.
So it's Overture Ship, it's Overture Car, and then it's Overture. So Overture is like 3 titles, actually.
Yep. That Overture Ship, I think, is a great example of what we're talking about here. Is just like there are kind of like your typical kind of sad, downtrodden, jazzy beats, but then there's also like metal clanging noises. But then there's like orchestras really lifting it up.
Yeah, it's got it's very loud, but so much when it wants to be.
Yep.
So much of the movie's very quiet, and that's where I feel like you get that kind of the industrial tones coming through.
Absolutely.
And then when it wants to hit you, when it wants to make a presence, it lets itself known.
Absolutely.
It's its own character, though. I think the music definitely is its own thing.
Yeah, it was something I appreciate a lot. I mean, it's exactly why I listen to the soundtracks on its own, just to try to absorb it, and especially for a film like this that I wasn't maybe super happy with the ending and looking for further meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be too artsy-fartsy with it, but it did, with just how you described it, it's a loud soundtrack. It kind of matches the architecture of Brutalism. It's like a loud style to it.
Yeah.
It's not like... It takes you because it's not what you expect with this, and very similarly here, that struck a similar chord.
Would you agree that it's peppered in, though? Like, it's not like a Nolan film where you're getting hit constantly with loud in your face.
Right.
I think it's very sparing when it's really hitting you. Otherwise, it's just like it's not traveler music, but it's getting you along in some scenes.
Yep.
It's pulling some weight. But when it wants to be a star, that's when it comes out. That's when it needs to put a punctuation on something.
Absolutely.
Almost.
And especially those industrial beats, I mean, or industrial elements to the soundtrack. I mean, that could just very well oftentimes be playing into the construction site scenes that we see when he's, getting down to building these buildings. And one of the touches I just really enjoyed was just how authentic, kind of like, again, this isn't part one. This is what I was, elbowing Tom for. But like, kind of government media was used as B-roll in this, which was enjoyable. Again, it was just like, it just felt so much like a passion project that I don't know really what the story would be, but it felt like Corbett would maybe like have those saved on a hard drive somewhere and be like, all right, maybe that's for a project someday. And to use those effectively in the storytelling was just really great.
Yeah, it did. It was,
once again, authentically PA to a point that it fooled Pennsylvanians. So a little scary, actually. I don't know if we can. Who knows if we'll be able to spot AI in
from
a couple years.
Yes, the guy that was born in 1988 in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah, that's another thing I googled. I was like, oh, was he at least born somewhere in PA?
Nope, not at all.
Ridiculous. Charlatan. He's
we
stealing.
Were smiling. We were
it's
all
appropriation.
After the third time they said Doylestown, Vin was like verbally saying like, "Oh my god!"
Because I also didn't expect it. Like I knew, I'm with you. Like I knew it was about he lands in Philadelphia or something like that. It's just like unreal. I feel culturally appropriated. But yeah, there is a lot that is excellent here. But I have to be honest, though, folks, after the intermission has settled and I was ready to see where this kind of once upon a time in America styled story, this immigrant story, was going to go, sadly, I think the story just didn't bring it home. Part 2 brings in Laszlo's wife, played by Felicity Jones. She was great in this. And we see Laszlo's relationship with Harrison grow increasingly toxic. We see that kind of coming to like a fever pitch. Like any good rise and fall story, I was eager to see how the little cuts of tension of their relationship, the things that they're willing to let go by, or maybe the minor insults that they let brush under the rug, how that reaches a further and
things
further
are bubbling.
tension. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I felt that the film was building that up in a great way because, again, this immigrant story about assimilating and not, and kind of maybe losing yourself a little bit is just in the same way of just like in relationships that you make, sometimes you just let things go and it's just you slowly kind of, that is a relationship. You kind of congeal. There's something here that... sadly, I think the climax was just... I really worded it this way. I thought about it a while. It was a significant disappointment for me.
Wow.
Feeling more than a little inconclusive for both our main characters. It made me reflect a lot on what the film was about, especially in what the epilogue tries to communicate about Laszlo's architecture directly. And I'm not here to prescribe what I think about it as far as what the ending means or what the film is about. If anything, I've commented multiple times on the podcast, like no spoilers is an advantage as well as a hindrance. Like it lets me be a little bit arm's length if I don't understand something fully. So believe me, I'm not here to say like this is about one thing, but I think personally I would have just liked it so much more and probably seen the level of hype that this is getting when I first walked out of the film. I just still couldn't shake that feeling of frustration that it doesn't line up with the praise as immense as the buildings the Brutalist is about. I think maybe it's about the buildings in that regard and not about the characters.
So I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
There's and this is where it's kind of fun. I mean, if you want to be with what we do to kind of get into it a lot and overthink things, sometimes it's fun to overthink things.
Sure, absolutely.
Overall, you and I are coming away the exact same on that ending.
Yeah.
Again, I would say last 20 minutes where maybe some people are going to love it. I don't want to just like tear people down to not get excited to see this or just be like, oh, here's this bad ending coming up. People might love it.
Sure.
It just wasn't quite what we were looking for.
Yeah.
But then the more you can kind of think of it and play with it in your head and why, it does make sense. Like you can understand why he went in this way and what it was actually about. And when it comes to the buildings and even,
some lines Laszlo even says.
There's stuff we can get into almost off the air.
The second round of conversation for this film. I guess we had a whole car ride, discussing it.
But the important thing is, like, I think there's enough there where it's not like it doesn't make sense. That's why I think it's going to be for some people, maybe just not for us. It's not out of left field completely. And it's kind of fun to theory craft with that.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't change. The important thing is, and that's what I like about you, I have listened to a lot about this film.
Okay.
And people try to connect things that I just don't think are connectable. It's just critics talking to other critics and being like,
the echo chamber.
Man, are you guys getting into it? Like,
yeah.
Woo, boy, you're sniffing each other's farts a little bit too much on this one. So it's fun. Bottom line, we walked out of the theater feeling left the tank a little empty.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a disappointment there, and that disappointment has faded a little bit as I've processed it. I think also the mark of an interesting film to check out is one that has provoked so much thought. This is a 3 hour and 30-minute film.
Did we say that?
Yeah.
Before?
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that before? Okay, yeah. 3 hours and 35.
It's a big boy film. But I guess I, in some sense, I'm glad that it's not just like, oh, yeah, these are really good characters and give the actors awards. It was something different, in its message, and it was something different in its experience. So there's something to it there. I think most of all, though, I really reflect positively on The Brutalist because I go back, again, to Corbett's passion involved in here, that B-roll footage that he's pulling from, the Vista vision that you explained, Tom, even how, like you said, the opening credits and closing credits, they're designed a little weird, just like all Brutalist architecture is a little weird to look at. And there's something there that I think I'll probably have to really watch this again to really process it. But I think for that reason, it gets a recommend for maybe a one watch in. I have to really just process it another time if I'm going to change it all on that. With that said, a big film to digest, and I certainly hope to see more from our director because he clearly, if he can put this much passion into his next project, I can't wait to see it. We're going to go ahead and give The Brutalist a 76.
Okay, a 76%. That's kind of where I thought you were going to be.
Yeah.
And really could have popped in the 80s if things were a little bit different.
Absolutely.
Overall, this is like homemade grandmother's soup, right?
Okay.
What is the difference between grandmother's soup and soup out of the can? It's the love.
Oh,
and you can taste the love in the soup, and I can feel the love of this movie. to your point, what you were saying about Corvette.
Yeah.
There is something in here that it just, I don't know. There's a rawness, a realness. There seems to just be a passion in the film. It just comes through the writing, which we didn't even say about the writing. I thought the writing was excellent.
Sure.
Very on it, like I don't know, very precise. It doesn't muck around at all.
Yep.
But the writing was really, really excellent. I thought the characters were great, specifically Guy Pearce and Adrian Brody. Felicity Jones did do a great job at supporting. Like if she gets a supporting actress nom,
totally understandable.
Totally understandable.
Absolutely,
she was lovely. And then I just want to make a comment of how big the movie was, and yet how small it was also.
Sure.
I found it to be obviously huge, 3 hours, 35 minutes long. We're talking about architecture and everything like that. But again, because of the budget and just because of what the film has to be, it's a very close shot film. So you're very close to characters and faces oftentimes, and it's not huge feeling. Like it doesn't feel like an epic. Maybe that's where I'm going.
Yes.
I had made comment to you. The only other film I saw in theaters that had an intermission was previous in the summer when I saw Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
That's an epic. That's got scale. That's got a different thing other than just length to it. And this was a cool vibe of that back and forth, that pushing and pulling of very, very big film, yet very, very focused and small film as well.
Yep.
And it worked. It was really good. And the writing, the performances helped carry that through. And
I think on that note, that's why we liked it the most, was the smaller moments, was the tension between Pierce and Brody.
Yeah.
Even going back to what we reviewed, Gladiator 1, it's just like, this works because it's small, even though it looks big.
Well, simplicity can be incredible sometimes.
Yeah.
And the film's simplistic.
Yeah.
But I like they do the time period, which it feels relatively right. And it just seems like it's executed very, very well with what they had to work with.
Yeah.
And there's a passion and love that comes through it on everybody's point, on everybody's side of things. And a massive shout out to Adrian Brody, because I thought he did phenomenal.
Absolutely.
I didn't know, because the Globes came out after we saw this. Or before that we saw this.
Before.
So it was just like, did Chalamet get shafted? Or are they just think he's too young? I watched this and I was like, Brody for the win. Brody for the win. Brody was great.
Absolutely.
This gets 2 shoes, 1 lace.
Wow. So right there, pretty much.
Yeah, I would say that. I think I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit hotter, I would say.
Okay.
And I kind of feel like you. I almost want to see it again if I have the time dedication to it. And I'll just reiterate what I said in the beginning too. If you get a chance to see it in a theater near you, and if it's in a good screening, like a Dolby Atmos, or you do have kind of a fake IMAX, just make it a day.
Yeah.
Like make it your afternoon or make it a day and just sink into it.
Yeah. Because I will say, for one, and I told you this right after seeing the movie, I loved the intermission because it gave me a moment, one, to catch up on notes.
Yeah.
But I just really did like being able to process the film of everything that I just saw in just such a significant, like, part 1, part 2 of how this is separated.
And to kind of how I said with the writing, how purposeful it is,
Yeah.
man, the way they get into the intermission was cool.
Yeah.
Opening credits, I was like, this is cool.
Yep.
There's something at least different here happening.
Absolutely.
Same
Almost a
thing
visual design to it.
Oh, big time, yeah. So enjoyable on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
A lot of levels. And I think part of the reason why we found the ending, maybe you and I, disappointed, or why we're both coming out disappointed, just goes to show with how much of the elements that we were loving.
Right.
There was actually a lot of love there.
Absolutely.
For some elements of this film.
And if anything, that feeling comes from just like wanting so much more for it as well. It truly is disappointment, not because it's outright bad, just because there is promise of like so much here. So the Brutalist, it's a big it's a big one. It's a big one.
Check it out, folks, if it's in a theater near you, or it will be soon as well. And it's good to see Guy Pearce. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I wasn't excited.
Call him your boy?
No, definitely not. I like Guy Pearce in Memento.
Okay.
And then I don't really know him for anything except for he played the old guy in the Alien movie.
Oh, yep. He plays Wayland
in Prometheus.
Yep.
And everyone said this. I was like, why does everybody think Guy Pearce is a big deal? This guy like sucks in this.
He's got like a bit role.
He's great in The Brutalist, I'd say. Great.
Yeah.
All right, Vin, thank you. So, anything you want to touch on? Anything for next week? Any notes?
No. I mean, believe me, I'm going to be saving my punches for next week.
Okay.
So, but thanks for a great 2024. Hopefully, we'll see you all next week on Tom Daly's.
Yeah, tune in for the Tom Daly's. It's going to be a big one, a big boy. So, Vin, thank you so much for watching these, scoring these, and stopping by this evening. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. We have The Order with a 63%, A Different Man with a huge 82%, A Real Pain with a 74%, and finally, The Brutalist with a 2 shoe 1 lace, and a Vin 76%. Folks, thank you so much. That wraps up all of the films that we got covered here for 2024. And as always, we're going to be seeing you next week right here on the Daily Ratings Podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. Just a reminder, the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. All right, so thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week at the Tom Daly's, and we'll be right here on the Daily Ratings Podcast.